Okay, so we have Kathleen Brand with us today on the next installment of LMAG Ask the Candidates. We're going to kind of get through this. This is the same way we've done the last ones, just asking you the questions and taking the answers. So go ahead and get you started. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your priorities.
Well, I have lived in La Mesa for 21 years. This is where my husband and I bought our first house and where we raised our sons and went to school. They're now 26 and 21. And I work as a planner and landscape architect for the city of San Diego in downtown. And basically I'm running because I feel that I'm so passionate about this community. And I've been a volunteer for so many years in different aspects with the city, with the schools, that I'm ready to take this on. So the three main things of my campaign are equality or equity, transparency, and infrastructure. And so the equity is basically making sure that we think of La Mesa as a whole and not just certain parts of La Mesa, not just certain sides of La Mesa, but that there are things that need to be done comprehensively throughout our city. And then the transparency is, of course, with the police force, which has been started, but to continue with that and to also look at the transparency and how the city makes decisions and how they conduct their business. And then the infrastructure is basically because we need streets, sidewalks, bicycle infrastructure, many things that need to be done in our city that have basically been deferred for so many years. So how can we get that done? Such as also like building our library that we were promised. So that's pretty much my campaign. I'm more of a nuts and bolts kind of a person because I work as a city planner. So I have some background in knowing how we can get things done for La Mesa as well.
Okay, sounds good. So what has been your involvement with civic issues and which leadership roles have you held? Are you actively involved in any local groups?
Yes, I'm on the Community Services Commission, which is basically the Mesa's version of a park and rec board, and I have been for the past 3 years. And I have also participated in the Sidewalk Improvement Master Plan. My husband and I were volunteers for that. I have extensively volunteered through the La Mesa Spring Valley School District. And then when my sons were in high school at Helix and Idea Center, I helped with 3 other people. I was one of the core group that basically fundraised and got built the community garden at MacArthur Park just recently. And I've participated in many public workshops for parks, for street improvements, things like that, as well as the town hall meetings. Is that everything you asked?
Yes, yes, thank you. So there have been calls in the past to defund the police in states across the country, which has been seen as controversial by some people. We have a new chief here in La Mesa, which presents an opportunity for change. Talk about your relationship with the police and what qualifications you possess that may help push for reform in the La Mesa Police Department.
Well, I think working in downtown San Diego, you get to see a lot of different things going on, and you learn that you have to work together with the police force. I don't believe in defunding them, but I definitely believe that we need to have the transparency that started. My sister-in-law works for the county, and her particular position is she reviews complaints against the sheriff's department. We've had a long talk about how the county does it, and I think there's some things that the county does that we can bring forward to La Mesa. I like the idea of not having the police on the commission, the oversight commission. I like the idea that the people on that come from a diverse side of the community, different parts of the community. And I think that we should continue to work with the police on reviewing issues that come forward and complaints that come forward. And it should be a separate investigation from what the police do with their internal affairs.
Okay, and just to follow up on the defunding, would you support reusing funds that may be allocated to police or the police department here for things that aren't necessary, like riot gear, the SWAT cars, or they had some kind of military-ish, excuse me, vehicle at one of the protests. Would you rather see that go to other things within the community rather than equipment that we don't need?
Well, I really have to get more involved in actually reviewing the police department. I can't say that I have a 100% thorough understanding of all of the gear that they have. I have a basic understanding of their budget, but I'd rather like to see that we continue to have programs that are working within the police department, like the home program. So if there's a way that we can allocate some of those resources within the police department to community outreach, to working with teenagers at the high schools, working at the middle schools, more community liaison, and maybe not exactly defunding the police, but looking at the direction in which they are going, and basically encouraging and doing whatever we can to make sure that stuff doesn't happen again, like the riots. And I think part of that is just because the police department was just shutting down and not communicating. And I think that's very important, that the city council should have been there, should have been more vocal, and the police need to understand that they are part of this community and representing us.
Okay. So what is your stance on Defend East County, DEC, and other vigilante groups?
Well, I never think vigilante groups are a good thing. I think, again, that most people have more in common than they think. And I think that when you take that policing out of the hands of the police department, which we can make accountable to us, and give it that power to a group that has no accountability, that's not a good thing. So I do think that we need to make sure that we're aware of these groups. And again, that we need to start working together as a community to basically bring some stuff like that down.
Just to follow up on that, do you think it's important for elected officials like city council members to openly denounce those types of groups?
I don't know if it's denouncing. I don't know how to say it. It's like there's free speech, right? People have a right to their opinions. Do they have a right to act violent? No. Do they have a right to be hateful and openly incite riot? No. So to me, it's a fine line. I have a 21-year-old son who has convinced me adamantly that freedom of speech is one of the most important fundamental aspects of our country. And I have to agree a lot with him that I don't want to encourage this. I don't want this riotous group of people coming together. I think we have to find common ground more than we find this deviation. So just tell them, I guess it comes down to the hate. And when the talk turns to hate, when the talk turns to digresses from a civil matter or a civil speech to something that's much more violent, that's when it has to be denounced.
Okay. So how would you address the needs of underprivileged groups in La Mesa, like people of color and immigrant communities?
I would say that part of the needs would probably be reaching out to them. I mean, if you think that they're new immigrants, their communication skills are not as good. So, for example, working a lot in the different school groups or in schools, when my sons were in school, it's just really about making sure that people are feeling welcome and that they understand. That might be everything from having city council meetings, basically some of the information translated, or it could be specifically if there was something going on that we make sure we have it in several different languages to represent the people of our community, and basically just making sure that people are getting the services that they need. So I think a lot of times parents don't know how to navigate the school systems. So making sure that we have a lot of information out there, making sure that we reach out to our communities.
All right, so we're gonna move along here to the next question. The city of La Mesa adopted a homeless action plan. Have you seen any good solutions put forward? And what do you think are the most pressing issues regarding the houseless in our community?
Well, the home program, I think, is a great start. The homeless issue in our community, it's got to have a multi-pronged approach. La Mesa can't solve homelessness on its own. We have to be working with our neighbors, Lemon Grove, El Cajon, Santee, the county, and trying to find and do our part of the solution. So the home program, I think, is great in that we've taken that responsibility away from the police department, which I think makes it much more antagonistic when we're approaching someone, to having an individual that can find them resources if they so choose. But I think we have to continue with the homeless issues. We need to start thinking about actually having a homeless shelter, even if it's just something as small as 30 beds, something like that. We need supportive housing solutions, and we absolutely must continue to work on affordable housing. To me, California doesn't have a housing crisis, it has an affordable housing crisis. There's not enough affordable. Everything is so incredibly expensive now that it's very difficult and very easy for people to fall through the cracks, lose their homes, and basically just can't find anything else from there.
Yeah, we've actually, some people within our group and just in the community altogether have come to the point where the owners of the houses that they're renting are selling the house, but they can't afford to actually buy the house that they've lived in for many years. Do you think that some sort of solution to that could be put forward by the council?
Well, that's a hard one too, because that's an individual's property. So that's why I think the city council should be looking at an inclusionary housing ordinance, which basically means that I would say that within a half-mile radius of all of the trolley stops, all multifamily housing projects that come in should have a certain level of affordable housing. So I would say at a minimum of a 60% AMI housing. So that's 10% of the units would be set aside for people at 60% of the area median income. I think that's the absolute minimum. I think if the city develops any new housing projects, the one thing they are doing is the old police station site. It is going to be 100% affordable units at different levels of the AMI. And we can still be developing even more. The city actually owns some different parcels. And one of the major parcels is right there next to City Hall. There's no reason that we can't find a developer to build some affordable housing for us, as well as market rate, and as well as build a library and everything else that we are looking for our civic center. So I think there's things that the city council can do. I don't know if the action is to basically tell a landowner that what they have to do with their land. We already got a lot of state mandates coming down. SB 9 was passed that allows every residential property to basically have a second unit on it. And it's considered ministerial, which means that by right, it doesn't have to go to design review board, doesn't have to go to planning commission, none of that. So it'll just be the individual property owner. I think what we can do is maybe look at incentives that since this is being mandated from the state, that we can look at possibly saying, I'm just going to throw this out here, and I don't know if we can do it, is reduce the fees for permitting if they make that second unit an affordable unit at a certain percentage AMI. And basically try to incentivize, since we're getting mandated with everything from the state down, how can we make this work for La Mesa? And there's different things that I think we can do to give those incentives for property owners to make some affordable units on their land, whether they're selling it or keeping it and want to develop further.
Makes sense. So moving along, what is your opinion on the soon-to-be Arts and Culture Commission?
Well, I hope they're looking at or including a diversity of people. I don't know if they've actually allocated the people to that board as well. I think it's a great idea. I hope that the city council funds it with something. I mean, that's always the La Mesa is phenomenal at putting together plans, and La Mesa is not phenomenal at implementing. So we have to figure out ways, if the community wants more arts and culture coming from the city or support from the city, we have to find a funding mechanism for that. And I have to admit that I am a big proponent of raising fees on developers. I think enough is enough. The developers, I think La Mesa is a beautiful city. People keep saying developers want to, develop it because of that. But we also have incredibly low development fees in comparison to the city of San Diego, significantly lower. And when I was as a member of the Community Services Commission, I've been pushing the city to take a look at their fees, because we need to start raising the fees on the developers so we can have funding. And maybe some of that funding could be used for arts and culture.
Okay, good answer. So do you support Jack Shu's climate initiative? What ways will this affect La Mesa? And why is it important for La Mesa to work towards these goals?
Well, I think we've all realized that there's climate change. I mean, we have to do something about it. And yeah, I am a big proponent of putting in infrastructure. That's part of my plan for infrastructure. Again, I mean, we have to start thinking about less car, but also planting trees, and not just trees on public land, but they're finally looking at planting trees, giving trees to people to plant on their own yards. But then you have to educate. And my husband, when we were walking the dogs today, he was saying, cities should actually have a program where people could ask about how to take care of their trees, because so many trees are cut down. And so it's a lot of different things that are going on right now with climate action that we do have to take a look at that. And one of the other things that I'm a big proponent of is the city is pushing for the revision of MacArthur Park, or the redevelopment of MacArthur Park. And they are going to pave over almost a third of that park with enormous buildings, surface parking lots. They're making MacArthur Park, or want to make MacArthur Park, the one and only park of La Mesa. When you have failing retaining walls at Rolando Park, you have missing play equipment at Northmont, and so much that has been undeveloped. So my point being is that we need to create this 15-minute city. We need to have neighborhoods. We need to have good amenities in all of our neighborhoods, along University Avenue, El Cajon, Lake Murray, Fletcher Parkway. We need to be thinking about making the whole city better, and not just one part of the city better, so that everybody has to drive to it. You should be able to, with your kids, ride your bike to an incredible park, or safely walk to school on a sidewalk with your children, and not always use the car, and continue to do stuff that basically helps the climate.
I like the answer. Very good answer. So moving along, with 4 Democratic candidates running against 2 Republicans for 1 seat, there is a lot of concern in the progressive community about splitting the vote and losing to Lower Lothian. Can you address those concerns?
I'm sorry, it's always against Lower Lothian. I wonder if she's got a complex. I don't know. I mean, I was told not to run. I'll tell you that right straight to my face. I was told, do not run. We've already picked who we want. And I said it made me incredibly angry. And because I feel like I have a lot of experience that I can bring to this city. And I have been working in the city and volunteering in this city. And I feel like I have the right to run. Yeah, I could split the votes. Yep, Laura Lothian could win. Even Jim Steringer could win as well. Or one of us, one of the 4 Democrats. I can't say yes or no to that, but I feel as an American, I have the right to run, and you have the right to not vote for me.
Okay, can't argue with that answer. So in this political climate with such division, how do you propose to get things done on your agenda if elected?
I think you have to educate. I think there's a lot of education that doesn't happen. When I listen to city council meetings, I'm surprised that some of the council members don't seem to really even understand what affordable housing is, even on basic principle. I mean, those rules and regulations are constantly changing from the state. So it is hard to keep up with it, all the nuances. But I think, and I know there's, you can't just meet on the side with another council member, or, there's rules with Brown Act and all of that. But I really think that we need to educate each other and educate each other on what are we trying to do. And the other thing I think that I can bring forward is vision for this community, because I never feel like the city council really has a vision. Like, what are they really trying to do in La Mesa other than respond to the items on the agenda? So I'm hoping that by communication, by logical reasoning, that I can actually convince people to move in the direction that I think we should be going.
Okay. So what other issues do you see as most pressing in La Mesa?
Well, I think we need to have a community library. We were promised a library 10 years ago, and I remember when that was went up, and I voted for the new police station and a new library. I think that we also need to start improving all of our parks. I think the one thing we've learned from COVID is that we absolutely need open space. Absolutely critical. It is not just for physical health, but for mental health. And our city is increasing in density. And the need for these parks and open space and access, safe access, is going to be even more critical as time passes on. And nothing ever gets cheaper over time. So I think those are the 2 major things. And I think also making sure that we keep up and make sure that our I always forget the acronym, Community Police Oversight Board remains in existence, and that we strengthen it over time, that we make sure that we always have accountability and transparency. And then I think we also need to enhance some of our other design review boards and historic preservation commissions, because I think that's also very important for La Mesa. I think that's what makes La Mesa so unique, is that our architecture, our design, and I want to continue that even if we are building these new multifamily housing units.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, I know this will kind of pique some people's interest. Would you approve of, or I guess agree with, adding some skate parks across La Mesa? I think we have maybe one right now. Would you support that?
Sure, if that's what people want. I mean, part of the process on improving parks has to be public workshops. And when people come out and ask for things, that's when you have to listen. So for MacArthur Park's master plan, it wasn't the skate park, but they were looking at a pump track, which you can use if you were a skateboarder as well. But it's mostly those up and down hills and corners and things like that. So it's not the rails and all the other things. I'm not a skateboarder, sorry. So I can't, my sons tell me to stop sounding like a dork if I try. So I won't even talk about it. But I think, yeah, there's skateboarding parks. I think dog parks, people have been asking for. Pickleball, people have been asking for. There's a lot of recreation elements that we can have in our parks, as long as we find the funding for it.
Okay. So let's see. How do you balance the need for housing and concerns of the community to keep La Mesa's family feel?
Well, I think another thing with all this new housing is we're seeing studio, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. I think we also need to start giving incentives to see 3 bedrooms, because I think that's what families want, 3 bedrooms. I think 2 bedrooms are good, but 3 bedrooms are family units. And we need to encourage and keep our families in La Mesa so that we don't become just a transit sort of community. Now, I think La Mesa, I don't think people realize that there is already a lot of multifamily housing in La Mesa. I think it's just been tucked away for so many years, people don't realize it. But almost, I think it was 47% of the residents to date live in multifamily housing. So, and I know that as a professional working in downtown, talking to people, so many people who went to San Diego State said, oh yeah, I lived in La Mesa because that was always where it was cheaper to live. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with some of the new development coming in, because we have to have it, we have to do our part. But I think what we need to do is make sure that we keep our families. And I would want to make sure that we keep affordable levels, because affordable housing is not for poor people. Affordable housing is for working class people who just have been pushed out of the market.
Okay, great answer. So that's pretty much all of the questions that we've been asking. There's one additional question that's kind of just been thrown at the end. And basically it's just, what do you think makes a good police officer, as far as like interactions with the community, interactions between officers, and just how they carry themselves?
Well, I think somebody who appears approachable. I mean, I've even had, well, my son was actually kind of upset with me one day because I questioned a police officer because he was yelling at me and I couldn't understand him. They were speaking on one of those speakers. And it was when I was working on the community garden. And I had the right to be in there because I was doing some work, taking some takeoffs and calculating some things for the different beds. And the police were telling me to get out and I couldn't understand, them. But they never once just walked over to me and just approached me and said, excuse me, why are you in the park? And so I think that's a big part of it. I remember there was, I'm sorry, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there was a police officer who was the liaison at Lemon Avenue School when my sons were there. He was approachable. I just remember he was just the nicest guy, and he would talk to the kids and he would talk to parents. And I think that's a huge, huge thing, is that if the police don't look like, don't bug me, or I'm the authority, but if they're actually interacting, hi, how are you? How are you having a good day? You know, that's the kind of thing that I want to see from our police department. People who actually look at every individual as an individual, as a human being, and actually talks to people. I think talking is key.
Good answer. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna see if anyone else has any questions. If they do, just feel free to pop on and ask them. Okay, Terry.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't know if this is a question you want to answer right now, but I loved a lot of the stuff that you said. And you do seem very knowledgeable, especially in housing. I think that's a very hot topic right now for most of La Mesa. A lot of people are concerned about it. And if the election, maybe this election doesn't go the way that obviously you would like it to go, would you be open to working on a planning commission for La Mesa? I know they have lots of commissions that work with the city council, because I think that your input would really be valuable. A lot of what you said makes a lot of sense. So I was just curious if you'd be willing to serve in another capacity, I guess.
Well, I have one more year in the Community Services Commission, and I'll probably finish that out. And then I have thought about going towards the Planning Commission if I don't win the election. And actually, this seat is up again in another year. So whoever wins has to go back through the process again in the next fall.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to follow up on that, if you don't win this election, would you try again you said next fall, I believe?
Yeah, two members. So this spot is up for re-election in the fall of next year of 2022, as well as Bill Baber's seat is up for re-election in 2022. So there's always two that are up for re-election.
So would you be interested in running again next year?
I'm considering it. I have to admit, I was very naive about politics. I'm very passionate about the community, but I've never really experienced the political realm, which there's a lot to it. So I've kind of already stuck my head out there, so I probably should just keep continuing with it and see where it takes me. Yes, I guess that's a long way of saying yes.
Okay. Okay. So that's it. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Unless anyone else wants to pop in with anything. Okay. I guess we're gonna call it. So we appreciate you being with us tonight, Kathleen. And good luck in the coming election.
Thank you. Thanks
Have a
for
good
having
night.
me.
You're welcome.